Hello and welcome back to this week's episode of This Week in Eorzea, where we go through everything that has happened in and outside the world of Final Fantasy XIV. If this is your first time coming here, please make sure you subscribe so you can keep up to date what happens each week as we go through the news, and make sure you click like as well. But let's get straight into what happened this week in Eorzea. So we're going to start off by talking about just a very quick update on the Final Fantasy XIV Billboard event that we spoke about last week. So if you want to know what that is, go check out last week's video. But essentially, what we know is that the event did, in fact, take place. I said in the previous one that probably wouldn't have, but it did take place. And so far, in terms of the players and the people involved, no action has been taken that I can find. If there is anything different, I'll obviously update it, maybe in a comment or anything. But as far as I can tell, nothing has happened to them in terms of consequences. I suppose maybe it's just, you know, I mean, although they should not have done what they did. No harm, no foul, I suppose. Like, it didn't actually hurt anyone, and it's probably more effort than it's worth to actually deliver any punishment. But we'll see, and if anything does happen, I'll update it. But until then, it's still the same as before. Then we move on to there being a massive amount of RMT bans. If you don't know what that means real money trading. So the information we have here, this from the Lodestone, is that Final Fantasy XIV has recently banned thousands of accounts for being involved in RMT actions, which is obviously against the terms of service. Accounts terminated 4,235 in total, 4 temporarily suspended. For botting activities, there's 3 accounts terminated and 4 suspended, which is a surprisingly small amount considering that 4,235 in total were banned, and only, according to this, 3 or 4 of them were bots, so that is interesting. But then it goes, botting activity and origin vendors are including under participation in RMT/prohibited activities, and then we also had 597 accounts terminated for real money trading advertisements. So yeah, not much else to talk about in regards to this, but it is nice to see that action is being taken. Next, we move on to the data center travel update hotfix that we spoke about, the problems that we had with it last week, and we expected it to be fixed. Here is the information on that. So this is also from the Lodestone. We'd like to inform you about the status of data center travel and the opening date of the temporarily suspended homeworld transfer service. We have completed the countermeasures against data center travel load with patch 6.18 hotfixes on Wednesday, July 13th. Since then, we have confirmed the number of users have been steadily increasing and the system operated stability without experiencing a high load. However, as the number of users is expected to increase over the weekend, we will continue monitoring until the end of the week to make sure that the system can continue to operate stably past the weekend. Since the Homeworld Travel service uses the same structure as the data center, we will wait until the end of the week to confirm that there are no issues and resume the service sometime next week. We will announce the opening date as soon as it is determined. We apologise for the inconvenience caused by the long wait and kindly ask for your patience. So yeah, that is essentially, they had to temporarily suspend the Homeworld transfer service for a few days, but essentially, as I said last week, we expected that to be up to date and fixed for this week, and it has so far, and it looks like it will be. Now we're moving on to something that is more controversial. We've been made aware this week, I spoke about this briefly last week actually, that Final Fantasy XIV's Astrologian and Dragoon job changes are now going to be officially postponed until 7.0, which has got people not particularly happy about it. This is what has been said about the proposed, the postponed changes to Dragoon and Astrologian. In previous live letters, we mentioned that Dragoon and Astrologian would receive extensive adjustments in patch 6.2. However, we'll be postponing these adjustments based on the feedback we received since patch 6.1. Making extensive adjustments to a job on a fundamental level would involve numerous changes. The sheer number of changes would make it difficult to fully explain our intentions for each one, so we believe we should wait for an expansion release to make adjustments of that scale. With that said, rest assured we will continue to make minor adjustments. When we publish the 6.2 patch notes, we are also planning to release explanations for job adjustments separately from the patch notes. Our goal is to clearly explain our intentions in their entirety, so please take a look when they're released. Although we understand the publishing our intentions will not necessarily mean everyone will agree with our job adjustments, but we'd still like to alleviate the current situation where players are completely left in the dark when it comes to changes. So that is the official line, speaking about how these the Astrologian Dragoons will have to wait until the next expansion, all the way to the next expansion for their complete job changes, which I suppose would be frustrating for people who obviously main these jobs, seeing, you know, other jobs that they play or their friends play getting the changes, and only having to have minor changes happen to maybe their favourite or job until the next expansion can be quite frustrating. Especially since the next expansion is probably a good while away yet. So this is an interesting one. I think this may be quite a controversial one because, again, at the same time, there's a lot of work on the development shoulders right now, and they seem to be like spiraling out massive amount of content. So you can understand their perspective of wanting to perhaps hold off making any changes until they know that it can be really good. But at the same time, it's frustrating for the players who want to see those changes. So I think I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about this. So let me know what you think in terms of the Dragoon and the Astrologian postponement in the comments down below. In our next story, we found out via Twitter Gaming that Final Fantasy is the 4th most tweeted game in 2022 so far. So the list I'll obviously have on screen, but first, most tweeted one is Genshin Impact. Not too surprising. The next one is Wordle, which again is not too surprising. The third one is Ensemble Stars, which is a game that I have never heard of and I didn't know existed, so I'm assuming it's a mobile game. Fourth is Final Fantasy. Then we have fifth is Project Sakai Colourful Stage, which is again a game that I've never heard of, so I don't know if that's a mobile game or something like that. Don't know what that is. Number 6, Apex Legends. 7, Elden Ring. 8, Fate/Grand Order, which is again a game that I've never heard of. 9, Valorant, and 10, The Legend of Zelda. So yeah, interesting to see that there is a few games in here that are obviously extremely popular that I didn't know existed, but more importantly, Final Fantasy there getting the 4th spot. Now, obviously this isn't just Final Fantasy 14, this is the whole entire Final Fantasy brand being tweeted, having a mass amount of tweets, and obviously we can presumably assume that this is because of the strengths of Endwalker and the Final Fantasy 14 updates and the community on Twitter, but also obviously getting news for Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 remake and things like that. It shows that the franchise and the games within the franchise are still as strong and as popular as ever, which is great. These are the main stories this week in terms of what's happening actually physically in and outside of the game. Not a huge news week in terms of this, but we do have another story which is based within, you know, the community of Final Fantasy 14. You may have seen this already. It was posted onto the r/Final Fantasy 14 Reddit page, and it is about a person who was banned for... The title of this person's Reddit post, and now the username is Mr. Dan Rant, and the title of the Reddit post is called "Banned for 10 days for being a pimp." So this was also a story that was reported from Vice News, so I'm going to be taking some bits from there and some bits from the Reddit post. So essentially, Danny Rant from Matthias server was banned for 10 days after publicly calling out an in-game client who tried to force a sexual assault roleplay scenario on a sex worker. So let's unpack that for a second. So he's on Matthias. So Mr. Danny Rant is a pimp. He, in his own words, he has according to his post, he has a few ERP businesses that he runs in Uldar. He also specifies that they are non-Lala and consensual hoes, That is a verbatim quote. And he's acquired 150 million operating costs from organise the settings and finances of being a pimp in Uldar. Okay, we'll carry on. So it was. This is back to some from Vice News. So it was during this event that a player who goes by the name of Danny Rant, which we spoke, got into trouble. Rant, who describes himself as an ERP pimp, he says he'll broker with Joes or clients who want to pay one of his over 100 contracted sex workers. The article says sex work is fairly common in Final Fantasy XIV, and players start up their own small businesses like brothels to earn in-game currency. Okay. Rant negotiates what happens between the contractors and the client ahead of their meeting. When one of the contractors came to him with a problem in the middle of a big erotic role-playing event on Balmug, Rant had to step in to defend him, and it got him banned for more than a week. The Reddit post, unfortunately, is no longer there. It has now been deleted, but it did make the rounds on Twitter. Rant said he was banned for 10 days for being a pimp. So he wrote that for the party, he brought a stable of 20 mostly bunny boys, Mikote, and 2 burly Rodigan males for the ERP event. Things were going well, and in his words, he made sure the people are comfortable and the situations are appropriate. And then there was a problem. And Daddy... Jesus Christ. And this again is a quote. Daddy Rant doesn't like problems. It just... The more you read, the weirder it gets. One of the clients tried to push non-consensual sexual assault role-playing scenario onto the worker. This was followed by harassment from his friends, calling my contractor horrible homophobic names. It was a male contractor, which resulted in Danny Rant being called in. He confronted the client privately, and when the client told Rant to F off, he said he took it to the public chat and then started ripping him a new one and calling him whatever he wanted. He got pretty bad on his end. It got personal. Obviously, he was using expletives and things like that, and the client left. But then the client also reported Rant for harassment. And then after that, they finished for the night, and then a day later, he got banned. So he was banned for the day from the game for 10 days, according to the email he received from the game developer Square Enix. So yes, he was banned. Officially, he was banned for violating the game's rules against profanity and offensive language. You may be asking me now, Rob, is there a moral or a point to that story? And if I'm honest, if there is, I am still searching for it, because God knows I don't know what I've just read, to be honest with you. I guess it's nice that the Final Fantasy allows such a wide breadth of people, having such a wide way of people to be expressing themselves. But having said that, I didn't expect to be reading an article from a pretty legitimate publication talking about this. But anyway, so that happened this week. Is everything that happened this week in Eorzea. So yes, not a huge news week in terms of updates to the game, but still we got some updates from what happened last week, and obviously then we ended with an utterly bizarre story, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of those for us to go through. Again, this is still a new show, so I'm going to be revising this quite a lot. So if you have any ideas or any thoughts for changes or segments and things like that can be put in the show, please let me know, and I will put that, and I'll use that, and I'll certainly take it on board and bring it into the next shows in the future. Now, another thing that I do at the end of these videos is I like to recommend a community video, and this week I'm going to be recommended the video from Joe Cat. So I want to talk about how it took me 300 hours to like Final Fantasy XIV and how you can too in far less time. I mean, if you know me and you know how I started with Final Fantasy, you know it took me a couple of tries to actually get into this game, so this video resonated with me quite a lot. It might resonate with you, and maybe if you have friends as well who are looking to get into the game or have tried before, I think this is a great video to show them. So I think it's a great video. I'll put that in the link in the description. Again, if you have any recommendations for videos that you would want me to check out and recommend, please put those in the comments below as well. Also, obviously, subscribe so you can find out what happens each week in Eorzea, and also click like because it helps build the channel and helps it grow. Having said that, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.